From the Oklahoma newsroom, it's time for another Thunder Thursday. Yes, it's the off season, but it doesn't seem like the Russell Westbrook news ever stops, guys. I'm here with our Thunder coverage team, columnist Barry Trammell, Eric Horn beat writer, Brett Dawson beat writer, and yes, it's a lot of Russell Westbrook talk, but it was during the regular season too, so why not? Okay, let's start with Kendrick Perkins, everybody's favorite former Thunder player. This week is doing a sort of a revisit of the Celtics championship team, and during that he says KD and Russ are talking again, that they've had a conversation. Eric, wow, is the fence mended, or are the pieces still all over the backyard in tatters?
I think they picked up a couple of little pieces, but there's still some splinters all over the place. But look, we don't know how long these guys had a conversation. Perkins said that they spoke after Westbrook broke the triple-double record for a single-season triple-double record in Denver. I think it's cool. I think it's great that they did have some kind of discourse. We don't know if it was Durant calling Westbrook, Westbrook calling Durant. I have a funny feeling it was Durant calling Westbrook or some other person that could relay the message to Russell. Russell was probably somewhere, sipping a soda given to him by Domantas Sabonis, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'll take the call. Sure, I'll take it." Or maybe it was collect. That would be even better. Collect call from Kevin Durant. Do you accept the charges? No, but put him through. that would be the ideal situation. But I think it's a great step in the right direction for these guys, kind of getting back to talking terms, as Perkins said.
I like the idea of it being collect call from, "Hey, it's KD. Congratulations on the record. Will you accept?" No. That's it. That's all I need.
Yeah, they spoke.
Yeah.
Is that considered speaking?
It's 2017. It could have been text too. For all we don't know necessarily. I sometimes call text conversations. So it could be that it's that sort of thing too. We don't know exactly what it was. That's a great opportunity. If that's when they spoke, it would make a lot of sense for Kevin Durant to at least reach out and say congratulations on breaking a really long-standing record. So if they are, that's great. I think ultimately we've always thought eventually, even whether it's when they're finished playing, eventually this was going to happen. Those guys played together for a long time. Yeah. Whatever the nature of their relationship was, it was friendly at times. They were teammates. At some point, that's going to mend. And so maybe that's the start of it. We should point out Kendrick Perkins has a vested interest in this happening. He's been talking about it for a long time, talking about trying to make it happen. And so, you take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt when it comes to these two and when it comes to Perkins.
Barry, it seems like the other option, collect call, phone call, text. Seems like the other option maybe add a second call, Kendrick Perkins being the mediator here, getting these two guys together. Could this have been a situation where Perk plays mediator, sort of as Brett alluded to? He's sort of been wanting this for a little while.
Well, I hope so, because I like Perk so well. I hope he's able to facilitate something like this. I tend to think not. I tend to think that while Durant and Westbrook, I think, like Perk, respect Perk, I don't know that he exerts that much influence that he could cause Durant to make the call, to Westbrook to take the call, for the lion to lay down with the lamb. But I think it's a good thing. One thing that came out of this Celtic reunion, those 5 guys on the panel, they still have a grudge against Ray Allen. Still haven't talked to Ray Allen. Literally 5 years after he bolts on them. All of a sudden that makes the Durant-Westbrook feud look like just a little bit, a playground deal in 4th grade. So it's time that these guys talked. They were good friends. They played together a long time. Split up, hard feelings, but get past it. It looks like we're on that road.
Obviously a lot of people around the sports world are interested in the relationship between these two guys, but maybe of equal interest to Thunder fans is what Perk sort of threw in there at one point about, I think, it wouldn't surprise me if Kevin Durant went back to Oklahoma City one day and played again for the Thunder. What are we to make of all this, you guys? Where's this coming from?
Well, I think that there's always a possibility that a guy can come back. I mean, you think about some of the ways that different athletes have come back at the back end of their career to places like, whether it's a LeBron James or, some other guys that we thought of that I can't think of off the top of my head. But Kevin Durant, I don't think there's any way, shape, or form he comes back to the Thunder in his prime. And I think that was one of the things that I thought about when he did leave. It's like, okay, this guy could stand a chance to come back someday, but it might be on the back end of his career when he's 35, 38, somewhere down there, and maybe he can stand in the corner and not have to do a bunch of stuff and just bang threes, because Kevin Durant's always going to be able to shoot. So when he's past his prime, when he's got his championships, when he's set in terms of his legacy, I think that would be a great time for Kevin Durant to come back. Will he come back? I don't know. Kendrick Perkins seems to say a lot of ridiculous stuff, too, from time to time. So it would be cool if Durant eventually did, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Remember, I love Perk, but remember Perk was hinting pretty heavily that he was going to be on the team.
Sure.
And that didn't happen. But, the shining example, obviously LeBron James is the guy we talk about and we say, well, if he could do it after a Comic Sans assault on him by the owner of the team, he could come back to that same owner in Cleveland, then it could happen for anybody. I think what Eric's talking about is much more likely, and that would be kind of like the Kevin Garnett scenario, like the situation where he goes back to Minnesota and he's a mentor for Karl Anthony Towns. If at some point there are guys like that here, if you got a younger team, and they always have some good young talent. Maybe after, even the thing Perk said, after he makes a little bit of a run. So Kevin Durant is going to chase his championships. If he builds a resume in that sense, some titles, then maybe I could see him coming back here at some point. I don't think it's going to be a situation where he and Russell Westbrook are Superman and Batman again.
Right. Yeah, but at the same, what you said about Perk saying things from time to time that don't come true. Barry, he did say a year ago that if the Thunder didn't win the title, he thought Durant would move on.
Doubt Kendrick Perkins at your own risk. I've always loved Gran Torino. I stand with him in almost every facet. I agree. I think Perk is right. I think there's a chance Kevin Durant could play here again. The guys are probably right. It's overwhelmingly likely that it won't be in his prime, but you never know. Things change by the year. And this is a 50-year, it goes back forever in the NBA. Rick Barry came back to the Warriors after leaving. Billy Cunningham came back to the Sixers after leaving. That was 40 and 50 years ago. So there's always the chance. There were no bridges burned with the Thunder management. Fans didn't treat Durant all that well, to be expected. And frankly, I don't think Durant held it against the Oklahoma City fans. I think he knew it was coming to some degree. So I don't think it's impossible for him to return. It's very unlikely it would be anytime soon.
And when we talk about the likelihood of him returning, I think for Kevin Durant, life is, individually, I think life is pretty good. Basketball is good. The winning is great. The chemistry looks fantastic. But, we've sort of heard rumblings that maybe, mom's not super happy with some things in, Golden State. And obviously, what matters most is what Kevin Durant wants. But yet, maybe being a big fish in a smaller pond, maybe that's one of those things that Kendrick Perkins is talking about here, guys. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that, as Barry said, I don't think Kevin Durant has any ill will towards Oklahoma. And I think Kevin has expressed that as much when he left. He wanted to seek a new opportunity. LeBron James made similar comments when he went to Miami, and he said that, when I went to Miami, that was kind of like my college phase. I never got to really experience that. I wanted to go and have that college phase of my life. And that was a metaphor for, discovery and being able to try something different. I always thought that that's what Kevin wanted to do. He wanted to go try something different and seek out a new adventure. And, the Warriors is obviously a new adventure. They've got headlines every day. And there's all kinds of media attention around them. And he gets the opportunity to win. So, once Kevin gets through that period of his life, yeah, there's certainly a possibility he could come back. And to the Thunder's credit and Kevin's credit, I think they both handled it both pretty well in the media in terms of, keeping that relationship to where it's not going to be completely deteriorated if Kevin does want to make a return someday.
I always wondered if at the back end of his career it might be more likely that going to Washington, going home to where he grew up might be a possibility. Brett, I know obviously we're a long ways away from that. He's still very much in his prime. But that's the other type of scenario I always saw playing out. And who knows, maybe he's got some other team he's got in his mind's eye that he'd like to play for down the road too.
And maybe the Warriors are a lifetime move, a career
Sure.
move for him. He's hanging out with Ricky Henderson. He's doing live chats in the back of a Volkswagen bus or whatever. He's enjoying the tech side of Northern California. He said on that live stream last night he's getting really into baseball. He's enjoying going to the A's games. He liked hanging out with Ricky Henderson. He's having a good life. He's having a good time with his life right now. And maybe that's something. They've got a team that can stay together the way they're constructed. They can build this team and keep it that way, keep those guys together if they want to. And maybe this is going to be it. This could be his only stop.
Okay.
I figure we can just throw Ricky Henderson and Kevin Durant some Oklahoman box seats at Bricktown Ballpark. If Kevin wants to come back, I mean, we can do the baseball thing here. We got a baseball team in Bricktown if Kevin's down.
As the senior member of this panel and somebody who actually remembers when Ricky Henderson played baseball,
Wait a minute,
hold on, man.
let me say this. If Durant thinks he got tired of Russell Westbrook, he's going to get real tired of Ricky Henderson. Let me promise you that.
All right, enough about a guy maybe staying or coming back to the Thunder. Let's talk about a guy that's with the Thunder, and did he give some inklings that he wants to stay even longer with this team, guys? Russell Westbrook, a new commercial out, extended, I think about almost 2 minutes long, online, black and white, for the luggage maker, Toomey.
Shout out to Toomey.
Toomey's getting a lot of play around here. I don't know if anybody has Toomey or wants Toomey.
I can't say I have any Toomey luggage. It's mostly just a Nike duffel bag on the road. I don't have the cash flow to afford the Toomey or leave it on the top of a building as Russell Westbrook did in the commercial, walking away from his luggage.
Maybe it's still there.
I might need to check today.
Midtown on the roof.
As much luggage as Brett had in our commercial, surely one of those bags was a Toomey.
Nobody.
I don't think they let me have the Toomey. The Toomey could get scratched.
Way too fancy.
Toomey's high end now.
Yeah.
It's a successful ad campaign, clearly, because until I watched that,
You had no idea.
I had no idea what Toomey was. I thought Toomey was the 1968 decathlete champion in the Olympics. Bill Toomey. That's what I think Toomey is.
Here's what now what you know is that Toomey is very fine luggage that is being very, very carefully handled by DeMontis Sabonis and Alex.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yes.
They know all about Toomey. Well, we've digressed to what the ad was actually about, not what we think it was about around here, which is Russell Westbrook talking a lot about home. And a vast majority of this commercial, guys, was Oklahoma City skyline, Oklahoma City residents and Thunder fans, and Westbrook talking all about home, 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 and all of this Oklahoma City stuff. Barry, we'll start with you. What does all this say about Russell Westbrook and his future with the Thunder?
It doesn't say anything to me. I think back to last April when Sports Illustrated printed its, a year ago April, when Sports Illustrated printed its Durant piece. I think Lee Jenkins wrote it. And Lee set the scene right over here at Deep Deuce, not very far. Kevin looks out over the city and says, what more do I need? This is my city, blah, blah, blah. And 2 months later, he ruined my 4th of July. So, I'm not putting any stock at all in this. I think it's a good commercial. Although I will say, it doesn't particularly put Oklahoma City in a good light. It made us look like Detroit. They took like the worst parts. It looked like we're the most urban, desolate place going. So I don't know that it really propped Oklahoma City all that much. But if everybody wants to get fired up thinking, hey, this is a good sign for Russell, then I'm all for you.
Yeah.
You get a good city skyline in the shot. That's as much as you can ask for. I think that is the commercial great, and has Russell for a year now and maybe longer, but if you look back, has he always said he enjoys Oklahoma City and the people here? Absolutely. Russell has never said anything false on the record about his feelings about Oklahoma City. He's always been straightforward about loving his time here, enjoying the Thunder, enjoying the city and the people, and all the love that he gets here. Does that mean he's signing that designated player extension when July 1st hits, or whenever the players can sign it after the moratorium is lifted in the first week of July? No. Because I think the Thunder has a lot of work to do in terms of ensuring that they can put pieces around Russell Westbrook, be it through the draft or trades that are going to be during that free agency period. And Russell Westbrook can still sign that same contract in a year from now and still get a mega amount of money and be one of the league's first $200 million players. So I don't think that a commercial should be any indication that Russell Westbrook is ready to put his name on the dotted line. Now, he could be, but he also couldn't. And that's the risk that the Thunder is running, because what if they get past this point, Russell Westbrook doesn't want to re-sign, or he says, I'm going to wait this season? Then they got some decisions to make in terms of whether or not they're going to keep him around or trade.
I think the interesting thing, Brett, to me was what Eric says is right. There's not been anything this last year or going back that is different than this current narrative in that commercial. But the timing coming out of the season, this it comes out now, and everybody's talking about will he sign that designated player extension. Just the timing of it all, and this is a guy that's so aware of his brand and his image, and so that, to me, I wrote today that I agree with you guys. I don't think it's a definitive thing, but I thought the timing was interesting, Brett.
Well, maybe it's just time to sell luggage. I mean, like, maybe it's
It's
time to
summer.
draw a lot of
It's
interest.
summer.
It's the vacation that you draw a lot of interest by having
Okay.
to talk about that. Here's the thing. When it comes to negotiations with Russell Westbrook, there are a lot of things that might come up. What's the future of the team like? What's the free agency situation going to be like down the road? What can you, as Oklahoma City, as the Thunder, attract to Oklahoma City to play with me? Here's what won't come up. They won't say, but you said in that commercial. You know, it's not. It's ultimately going to be meaningless.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Let's break it down this way. This DPE, which is going to become one of those alphabet stew things that we know a lot about in this city. That designated player exception. Chances Russell Westbrook signs it in you guys' mind right now. And did it inch up at all with the commercial? Who wants to tackle it first, Barry?
I thought you were out of the business of this.
I am out of that. It's a great point. However, wherever it's at, I am going to say it did inch up a little bit for this reason. I've thought, just from the way Russell acted with Durant's departure, he clearly was wounded. He clearly didn't like it. He clearly was miffed at Kevin. For him to bolt a year or so or 2 years later would be bad form. And for Russell now to have done this commercial, home, I'm going to go play for the Lakers, would be a bad look. So I don't know that. I mean, you can just look at what Russell wears to some games and know he doesn't really mind a bad look from time to time. However, I do think it's a sign that maybe, you know, it's going to be harder for him to leave after making a statement like that, even if it's very incremental.
Okay, Barry didn't give a percentage chance, guys. So I'm
Eric
leaving.
wouldn't let me, and
I'm leaving that to you.
I got a percentage for you. It's Tony Kornheiser math. It's 50-50. He either will or he won't. So that's
Brad.
that's the and I would. My thing is, I thought there was always a really good chance he would sign it. I think there's a really good chance he'll sign it today. The commercial means nothing in terms of my percentages. I think it's probably a better than 50-50 shot that he stays.
Eric, what's the chance in your mind? And is there a not timeline, I hate to say that, but do you have a sense of when in your mind? That's a new twist on my question.
I mean,
for you, Eric.
I think Russell Westbrook probably has his mind made up right now whether or not he's going to sign the thing or not. I don't think anything's going to change between May, whatever it is today, and July 4th or the 5th, whenever the moratorium is lifted. Chances, Barry's got his finger up.
He's ready to jump in.
I don't know about the chance.
He's ready to pounce.
You know, if people like hypotheticals and percentages, fine. 75-25. You happy?
That he does?
That he does.
You guys are making everybody feel better.
Well, sure.
Everybody up.
Look, he hasn't given any indication that he wants to be anywhere else. Not to mention that the situations where he would be going, if there were a situation where he was like, okay, walks in the Thunder's office and says, Sam, trade me. All the other situations out there where Russell Westbrook will potentially be able to go and the Thunder be able to get anything close to equal value, which they won't, by the way. They're going to be getting a nickel on the dollar. Then he'd be going to a place like the Lakers or the Celtics or a bad team, and he's going to have to basically do the same thing he's doing here. He's going to have to carry a team. So where are the situations going to be better for Russell Westbrook to go if such a scenario does arise? Which is why, and also there's 219 million reasons for him to sign the contract as well. So I know we've said this before with Kevin Durant in terms of the money. That's a ton of money. That's an additional year that Russell Westbrook can sign on to. It's going to be hard for him to pass that up, whether it's this summer or next.
You seem to be channeling Serge Ibaka from last.
Where'd he go?
Where'd he go? You tell me. Where'd he go?
Where'd he go? We're not making fun of Serge. That's
No,
literally what he
it's
said.
literally what he said.
Where'd he go?
And the answer about a month later was Oakland. But how about what's the chances, since you guys are throwing out the percentage, what's the chances that Sam is able to pull off the Kevin Durant midnight knock on the door with Kevin Durant now 6 years ago, and at the very first sign of free agency, they're knocking on his door at midnight on July 1st, and Kevin Durant signs in the wee of night, and everybody wakes up to a beautiful experience.
Probably going to have to be in California when he does that, but that's fine, too.
I bet Sam would go.
Yeah.
I bet he would go.
Russell's going to have a baby in one arm. He's going to have to open up the door and be like, shh.
Hey, he's good either way. He's ambidextrous. He could sign with either hand.
Yeah, I don't know the timing, but I do think it's interesting what happens on draft night. We saw Sam Presti pull off a huge trade on draft night. Could that push Russell Westbrook to a decision quicker? I don't know. It's all interesting because I'm like you guys. I think free agency is important, but there's not a major piece out there. I mean, we've all gotten this question, guys. Let's get it out there right now. We've all gotten this question, whether via email, people in face-to-face, on our live chats, what about free agent options? Guys, they're not going to get a Kristaps Porzingis. I got to ask about him today.
He's not a free agent.
You think the Thunder's interested? Yeah, they're interested, but, you know, like, it's not happening. But is free agency, is that going to change the roster so fundamentally that it will alter Westbrook's decision? Do you guys feel like they have to do some things just to make sure he's aware they're willing to keep changing building?
They got to do. I'm sure they have to do some things to try to make themselves more competitive. He's a superstar. He wants good players around him. He wants them to be better. But you know, to get a superstar player, to add a Gordon Hayward or Blake Griffin, all these guys people talk about, they need about $30 million in cap space. They have about negative $30 million in cap space. So they're nowhere close to being able to do that. These will be small moves. If anything big is going to happen, it's going to be a trade. And if anything really splashy is going to happen, it's going to be a sign and trade with one of those guys who comes out and says, you got to send me to Oklahoma City. So, no, I don't think they're going to do anything overwhelming in free agency that's going to sway Russell Westbrook. I think what you're looking at is just showing him you're not going to come back with everything exactly the same and make him do all the same things.
The Thunder made a move last year to strengthen their team with bringing in Victor Oladipo, Sabonis, Ilyasova, and ship off Serge before he hits his contract year and the Thunder has to pay up a ton of money. That was made with the thought that they could improve the team with Kevin Durant coming back and show to him that they were serious about making some moves to make this team better. What's to say that they do the same thing on draft day and you end up in the same situation? It doesn't guarantee anything what they do on draft day as to what Russell Westbrook is going to do, which is why I think that whether they make a big move or not, Russell Westbrook has already made up in his mind if I'm going to take this money or I'm going to wait a year.
But the draft is an interesting point, Barry, because it allows the Thunder to potentially bring in some pieces that could help before free agency starts. We were talking about the Raptors in the office today, and obviously it looks like things are about ready to hit critical mass in Toronto. Is there, that's just one of the options, but could you do a draft night option that might bring you some guys that Westbrook can say, this could help? I mean, it seems like the timing of the draft as it relates to July 1st with this DPE could be pretty advantageous for the Thunder.
The draft is clearly the major avenue by which the Thunder can make a big deal this year in conjunction with Enes Kanter. They really don't have anything major to trade that they want to trade. I mean, you could trade an Adams or an Oladipo, but then you don't have Adams or Oladipo, and you got a new set of problems. But Kanter is he's a commodity you could trade. Big man, scoring post man, not as valuable as it used to be, but still valuable to some teams that don't have that kind of scoring. And that first round draft pick in a very deep draft. If you're able to put those two together, you could probably get some quality in return. So that's the most likely scenario. Thunder can't do anything before draft day. They can't trade that pick. They have to make a pick at 21. But they could have a deal with Toronto or Philly, whoever, it doesn't matter. Have a deal ready. They pick for that team and then trade those guys. The Thunder didn't draft Sabonis. Orlando traded Sabonis, then the trade was made.
Yeah, all right, lots to talk about as it relates to the draft. We don't want to blow through all of that today, considering it still is the middle of May. But I want to remind you, you're watching Thunder Thursday here as we talk about all things Thunder, primarily all things Russell Westbrook to this point. Guys, let's divert for a second and actually talk about the playoffs going on, which, yes, they're still going on even though the Thunder's out. It seems a little odd. But let's start with Manu Ginobili, Barry. He got in the Wayback Machine at some point.
Ginobili.
My favorite NBA player. My favorite NBA player. Love to talk to him, love to watch him play. He's 39 years old, and he plays good about once a month. But let me tell you, when he plays good, and he saves the Spurs. And what a wonderful game he had in Game 5. Really pulled him out of the skillet with some, he had 7 rebounds for crying out loud, plus 12 points and the big play at the end. Spurs won a game they had no business winning. No Tony Parker, no Kawhi Leonard in overtime. 2 big men, Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge, that are headed for the Hall of Fame and look like stiffs all night long. And yet Ginobili, Patty Mills, Danny Green willed the Spurs to victory.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff, guys. And really, we'll get to this in a second. It's kind of been a quiet, in a lot of ways, playoffs as the Cavs are rolling and the Warriors are rolling. But, Eric, I mean, this Spurs-Rockets series has been pretty juicy. And the Rockets, I mean, Barry mentioned all the guys the Spurs are without. Rockets are down to a very few at this point as well.
Yeah, it's been an interesting series, and particularly in Game 5 where the Rockets really let an opportunity get away. I mean, when you don't have Kawhi Leonard on the floor, you got to win that game on the road. And the Rockets really showed that they let one slip away, particularly James Harden. He didn't come up the way he should have in that overtime period, letting Ginobili block him at the end there. He looked tired. He was settling for jumpers. We know James likes to set up that step-back jumper a lot, but there were times where he should have probably went to the basket where he had a guy on him, and he elected to take that step-back jumper. So, the Rockets let one slip. They're going to come back in Game 6 and probably have a better performance at home, especially depending on the health of Kawhi Leonard, because he's questionable for the game with that ankle injury. But as Barry said, it was fun watching Manu Ginobili bounce back the way he did and have that throwback performance. You saw it coming. He switched to the right-handed dunk down the lane, and you were just like, this is prime Manu time. It was fun. It was fun to watch.
Hey, in defense of the Rockets, let's be fair. They have, from what my personal experience tells me, they are without what this year has taught me is the greatest player in the history of the Galaxy, Nene.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not playing in this series either. So both teams a little bit shorthanded.
Yeah, but let's remember, Manu Ginobili dunked in the year 2017
Correct.
in a playoff game. Not in practice, Barry, you wrote a blog on Ginobili and Harden, the fact that they really have similar games, the old man game, but how different their paths have been. And it really is crazy to think about, that when the Thunder was young, when we were still watching Durant and Westbrook and Harden all at the same time, how we thought he was the Manu, he was going to be Manu Ginobili. That seems long ago and far away right now.
Yeah, it's a little bit sad. We used to think Durant was going to be Tim Duncan. Turns out that Tim Duncan's the only Tim Duncan. He's still in he retired. He's still a San Antonio Spur. He goes to practice and leans on Pau Gasol. So turns out Durant wasn't Duncan. James Harden was not Manu Ginobili. James wanted to run his own team. Can't blame him. He's an MVP candidate. He's a fabulous player. Manu Ginobili, for whatever reason, could have done the same thing. Manu Ginobili could have gone to Philadelphia, could have gone to Boston, could have gone to the Knicks and been the star of the show. Let me tell you, Manu Ginobili would be a legend in New York City if he had left the Spurs 10 years ago. But he stayed in San Antonio. He was happy there. He was content. He's had a fabulous career. Still love watching him play.
Yeah. Brett, I mentioned earlier the Cavs and the Warriors having, waltzing all over these playoffs, neither losing a game to this point, looking like they're on a collision course with each other in the NBA Finals. We actually ran a column in the paper, I believe it was today, by Tim Kalishaw down Dallas Morning News, saying we should embrace this matchup as it's going to happen and we're going to love it. Should we embrace it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we should want because they're clearly the two best teams. They're so much better than everybody else. Look, maybe Scotty Brooks in Washington can pull an upset here, but I don't think they can win a game in Boston. So maybe, even though they look like they're a better team than the Celtics, I think they're a team that could at least push Cleveland a little. I'm not sure about Boston. Neither one of them can beat Cleveland. This Houston-San Antonio series is great. It's fun. Neither team has a shot to beat the Warriors. This is what we should want. It's been really fun 2 times in a row, and I'm here for the third one. I want to see it.
If either of those teams, Warriors or Cavs, gets another team besides Warriors or Cavs in the finals, it's 5 games.
Yeah.
If we're going Warriors and Cavs, 6 at the least. LeBron James is playing some of the best ball we've seen him play in his career, which is crazy to say because he's had some unbelievable series. And don't we want to see Kevin Durant on that biggest stage again? Don't we want to see how he responds to the challenge once he gets up in the finals again? I mean, it'll be 5 years removed from playing LeBron James in the Heat in the finals. Don't we want to see how Kevin Durant culminates this series where he made the most controversial move of the year and change the balance of the league? Don't we want to see that, Barry?
No, we don't want to see that.
No, you don't want to see that. I want to see that.
We want to see Kevin Durant suffer basketball-wise. We want to see him flame out, not against the Cavs. We want to see him flame out against San Antonio or Houston. I want to see him flame out against Utah. That series is already over. No, we don't want to see it. I don't want to embrace Warriors-Cavs. I do not embrace North Korean elections. I don't like preordained results. And that's what the NBA has given us. They've given us a preordained NBA Finals. So, yeah, it's going to be great in June. But guess what? There's more basketball played in April and May and February and March. Way more than 7 games in June.
You do not like green eggs and ham.
I do not like them.
Do not.
I do not like them, Sam.
I think this is. I think if those two teams play again, Barry, I don't think that's North Korea. I think it's the good one.
The good one.
Yeah, and as Cannon would say, it's the good Korea.
You know, I agree that there's a lot more basketball that at this point does not look very important before we get to those finals. That makes me think, how much did Russell Westbrook save us and save all of basketball this season by giving us something other than Warriors and Cavs to talk about for 82 games of the regular season? Because we'd all been sitting around twiddling our thumbs thinking this isn't very exciting, but instead everybody's talking about Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, and we really got one of the best playoff series, even though it was 5 games. It was short, but it was probably one of the better series we've seen so far until Game 5 against in Spurs Rockets, and even the 4 games prior to that have been lopsided. So thank you, Russell Westbrook. I appreciate it, man. I hope you're enjoying your summer and the child to come.
That's the thing. The playoffs have been largely dud.
Yeah.
4 Jazz Warrior games, routes. Cavs Raptors, routes. You mentioned the blowouts in Spurs Rockets. A couple of good games in Boston, Washington, but 3 routes in the first round. It's hard to find good ball games. We once had a playoff series, Thunder Grizzlies, that had 4 overtime games, for crying out loud, and you can't find 4 good games in the entire NBA playoffs. Yeah. So, yeah, forgive me if I'm not embracing the Warrior Cavalier dynasty.
I came this close to watching hockey this week. I almost did it. And I'll do it too.
You would not have been blamed.
I'll do it too. Don't tempt me. Don't keep pushing me.
Let me tell you what. Now, if you start watching baseball, you've crossed the line.
Well, let's not go crazy.
Yeah, we're not that desperate. All right, guys. Lastly, since the Thunder is out of the playoffs, we're firmly in the middle of Thunder a Day in the month of May. This week we've already looked at Enes Kanter, Kyle Singler coming up tomorrow. Nick Collison. I don't want to give too much away. Very potentially the greatest headline in the history of online headlines with your Kyle Singler grades.
At least he hustles.
So we'll talk about Singler in just a second. But those 3 guys, Kanter, Singler, Collison, who's most likely to be gone off of that trio?
That's an excellent question. I will start, and I will say the easiest one to part with would be Collison. And yeah, I guess I'll bite the bullet and say Collison. His contract's up. He's the easiest one to part with. Collison still has some juice, but he just didn't play enough for this team to justify that roster spot, unless the Thunder just wants to basically just sacrifice a roster spot every year and say, look, this is the Nick Collison Memorial roster spot. We're not letting anybody else take this guy's place until he tells us he's going home. And I can totally see Collison coming back next year for another team like the Spurs and being hooked up to the rejuvenation machine. They check him in. He's throwing a patented backdoor pass, and everybody's going crazy in San Antonio because they've got another guy that can contribute to them marching to 60-some-odd wins.
They have a wayback machine,
apparently. They have a wayback machine. They hooked up David Lee to it for a little while. Paul Gasol shooting threes. There's no telling what you can get out of Nick Collison.
Here's the other reason I think it's Collison. It's not just is the Thunder going to bring back Nick Collison. Does Nick Collison want to be back here? He didn't play much. He played very limited minutes. He's basically like a designated player against Memphis and maybe some San Antonio. There's some teams that are good matchups. Other than that, he doesn't play a lot. He's been saying not that he wants to spend another season in the NBA. He's been saying he wants to play. And I think that's an important distinction. If he wants to go somewhere and find minutes, I don't think that's going to be back in Oklahoma City.
Anything different in terms of those 3 who's most likely to go back?
No, I think it's Collison. Brett's right. It sounds like Collison wants to leave. Thunder has a lot of big guys in front of him. He could end up San Antonio, I suppose. I mean, we're going back 8 years. You know, there were rumors that the Spurs wanted him when the Thunder first got to town. But I tell you, a place he could go is Golden State. I mean, they're gonna. That's a team that turns over in this new era. They're going to be turning over the bottom of that roster every year, trying to find new guys playing at the minimum. And so Collison would be a handy guy to have there.
Kevin might actually call him, not collect, and Nick would answer. He'd answer that call.
Probably so. All right, who of those 3 is most likely to be on this roster? If Collison's most likely to go, then it's either Kanter or Singler.
Well, it's Kyle Singler. I mean, you don't want to be rude, but you can't get rid of the guy. I mean, how's he going to be somewhere else? I mean, he's almost untradeable unless you just really make a sweetheart deal with somebody and get him to agree to throw it in. He's making $5 million a year, and he can't play much anymore. So.
But we were talking about this also in the department. Is he irreparable? I mean, could he just with a new with the new surroundings, could he maybe recapture some of what we saw in Detroit before he got here?
You know, he's not old. I mean, he's probably around 28 years old or so, and he's a guy who, before he came to Thunder, had a 39% three-point percentage. That seems like it was eons ago because he hasn't really done much in the 2.5 years he's been here. But as Barry said, it's going to be really hard to find somebody that's going to want to take on that contract the additional 2 years. You're probably going to have to take something else back to account for the $10 million that somebody's going to have to pay Kyle Singler over the next couple of years. Tripping over my words, Kyle Singler is so difficult to say. But, you know, the Thunder still has the option of being able to stretch out his contract over the length of 7 years and pay in small increments over that time. Now, it would stink to have to look at your books every year and say, oh, we're still paying Kyle Singler? Oh, that's unfortunate. But at the same time, it wouldn't be as bad as still having to take up a roster spot now, and maybe you can get somebody else in here.
It's crazy as we're talking about who could stay, who could go, that Enes Kanter is the one solidly in the middle of these three, Brett, because he's for so long been the guy that when you talk about trades, he's that guy you first mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, what Barry talked about is true. He has value as a low-post scorer. He's one of the best offensive rebounders in the league, but he has a sizable contract, and so you're going to go out onto the trade market with him, and obviously they're going to make calls, and obviously they're going to try to see if they can move Enes Kanter. The trick is, it's 2017, it's the NBA. He's not a good defensive player. He doesn't move his feet well. He doesn't switch well. He can't get out on a point guard and defend there capably. And so what is his value? And are you going to trade him just to trade him? You got to get something back. If there are no trades available for him, he's going to be back on this team because they're not going to get rid of him just for the sake of getting rid of him.
Right.
No, because he's a valuable player.
Right.
He helps the Thunder. No reason to. It's not like Kyle Singler, who you'd really just like to move on down the road.
Yeah.
Enes is not a negative.
No,
in fact, he's a positive, and that's why he would be on the trading block.
This is a bad bench, and he's a really dependable second unit scorer. So he has matchups where he's not going to be good, but he has great value.
Guys, before we end, Barry's grades, player by player, as a regular part of the Thunder a Day. I don't want you to give it away, but you say, in the Nick Collison grade, most controversial grade you've ever given coming tomorrow.
Yeah, probably so. I'd probably get some emails. But I got something I think Nick could do better, and I think I stand by it. I think there's something he should have done he didn't do, and we'll see if they take to the streets to run me off.
That's a good tease. Okay, guys, the grades that have come out so far. Any favorites? Anything you want to go against and argue with Barry on that he's done in the grades?
I'll tell you what, I want to give Barry credit for grading Josh Eustace because that's a small sample to grade. That's a guy who, if this was a class, he'd gotten all incompletes.
Yeah.
So kudos to Barry for just coming up with enough stuff to grade Josh Eustace.
He played 31. He played 31 minutes all season. I literally could have just graded all 31 minutes. Minute 1, B. Minute 2, C. Minute 3, A.
You wrote, how many words per minute played did you write in that grade?
I got about 386 words out of it.
So you got like 10 words
10
per
words
minute played.
Yeah,
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, well, guys, the baby watch continues. No Westbrook baby yet, but we'll be following that. Who knows? We may be talking about that next week during Thunder Thursday. But until then, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.